Not surprisingly, a lot of people in our audience are very concerned about water quality, in particular about the Great Lakes. And we have a question from Lori, and she asked, basically, what are you going to do to safeguard them, our Great Lakes, as governor?
There's no question that they're being threatened, whether it's invasive carp, and that will take a multi-state approach, but actually acknowledging that there's a problem and then dealing with it, looking at it with other states. When you look at the 23 million gallons of oil that we're pumping through the straits in a pipeline that's 65 years old, that has dents in it, that's bent, that doesn't have the supports, it's just a time bomb, and it will break just like the Kalamazoo line broke, and we don't know when, whether it will be winter or summer, and the implications that are involved in that. So it would be tragic if it broke, and one of the first things I would do as governor would be to decommission Line 5 because of the concern and fear. And again, that comes from my work with pipelines and so forth in Africa, and the fact that a very similar pipeline in Kalamazoo broke, and there have been other leaks and so forth. So the Great Lakes are just precious, and so I think the first thing we have to decide is, yes, we're going to decommission it. What are we going? How are we going to transport oil and so forth? That's the second question. But the first question is, how do we protect the Great Lakes and, in turn, protect the citizens of the state? A third issue would be sewage leakage. We leak billions of raw sewage and partially treated sewage into our Great Lakes every year. That has to be dealt with, not ignored. It closes beaches. It interferes with tourism. It keeps people from coming to the state of Michigan. As I travel the states, it's very common for someone to make a joke about pure Michigan. You know, why would I come to Michigan? That's called pure because the water is bad, the roads are terrible. You're going to poison me with the water and beat up my car. What kind of joke is that? And so it has to be dealt with, and we have the technology to do it. We just need to do it.
So you kind of touched on what my question was, which was your plans for the future of Line 5. So let's talk about how you would transport that oil. Do you think that that's an important resource? And if so, what would you do instead of Line 5?
I think it's an important resource. Believe it or not, it's very difficult to find out how important. So it depends who you talk to. But I believe it's important. And I believe that transporting by truck or railroad cars is more dangerous than actually a pipeline. It's been proposed that we build a tunnel. There was a feasibility study done so that you could walk alongside it and check it. I think that's a reasonable suggestion, but that will take years and years to produce. And so, the question is, do we actually stop the flow of oil and figure out where the oil is going to come from other pipelines for the state of Michigan, and have an honest evaluation of what are our needs. There are two natural gas plants going in the UP. Does that meet the needs that we have? And so that would have to be looked at, but I would decommission the line.
Are there any other energy resources that you'd be interested in investing in as governor?
Well, I love green energy, so solar and wind. When I was in Africa, I solarized 2 hospitals. I solarized our house. We lived in a solar house, and we solarized 6 of our 20 dispensaries because we needed snake antivenom. So I like solar. I grew up on a farm that used the windmill to pump water. So those are great resources that we need to take advantage of. Whether we should mandate and subsidize, that's a separate question. But my overall thoughts on green energy and minimizing the use of fossil fuels is that if we can do it, let's do it.
Hassan?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on if you do have any plans to clean up water contamination caused by industrial chemicals like PFAS.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There are over 7,000 toxic sites across the state. 3,000 of those are orphan sites where we don't know those that are responsible for the leakage are no longer there. Those sites, many of them are potentially leaking contaminants into our groundwater system, which then leads to our rivers and lakes. And so this has to be dealt with and not just ignored. It has to be at the top of the list. We have to deal with it. The question always is, well, what about funding? And I think two parts on that. One is we have tried in the last years, 10 years and longer, to clean up those sites. But it's interesting if you look at the accountability part of that, a lot of that money was used for parks and walkways and tennis courts and swimming pools, and so it wasn't all used for toxic cleanup. And so I'm talking about using the money for what it's designated for. I would look at tipping fees. This is the cost that we charge for people to dump trash in Michigan. We're an international dumping site. International. When we look at the trash that's dumped in Michigan, there are states that are trucking it in 100 miles because we're only 36 cents a ton. Wisconsin's $13 a ton. We're not in sync with the states around us, and so we're like a magnet attracting trash to the state of Michigan. And we really don't need other people's dirty diapers and banana peels and coffee grounds and things like that. We just don't need them. And so I believe that we should increase our tipping fee so that it matches or is similar to the states that are around us, so that we're not that magnet. And the funds that we get from the trash that's dumped here, I believe, could be used for these toxic sites. And it's been shown easy $79-80 million could be garnished that we could use to clean up the sites.